The Herb of Grace by Elizabeth Goudge. There's rue for you, and here's some for me. We may call it Herb of Grace o' Sundays. Oh, you must wear your rue with a difference. Hamlet. First published by Hodder and Stoughton, March 1948. Read by Deborah Fielding. Chapter 1. 1. The sun, shining through the uncurtained east window, woke Sally to a new day. It spread a long cloak of gold over her body as it lay upon the bed, and the loving warmth reached through to the very soul of her, and she woke up smiling, stirred a little, rubbed her knuckles childishly in her eyes, then stretched out her long body beneath the cloak of gold, and lay still again, happy, and completely unafraid. She always woke up happy, because she had been born happy and didn't seem able to help it. And she was not afraid, because nothing had yet happened to her to make her afraid. And in body, mind and spirit she was equally healthy and well-balanced, and saw those things that hadn't happened yet in their true proportions. But the thrill of tranquil happiness with which she awoke was followed always by a slight sensation of guilt. Other people were not born happy. Other people were afraid. Her immunity seemed very wrong, and she was ashamed of it. I'm sorry, she whispered now, and she spoke to all those people who hadn't her transcendent luck. Her arms, lying stretched out beside her, moved a little. She would, if she could, have taken them all into her arms and rocked them as a mother her child. But it couldn't be done, and knowing it couldn't, she suddenly abandoned herself to joy like a bird to the wind, leapt from bed, her tall body in its yellow pyjamas like a sword of gold in the sun, flashed into the adjoining bathroom, banged the door, stripped, sprang into the bath, turned on the shower and broke into loud, uproarious song. Her father had gone away yesterday to spend a night at Winchester, and then 2 nights at Bournemouth, visiting important personages who wanted their portraits painted, and she was alone in the flat for 2 days. She wholeheartedly loved her father, but he was quite extraordinarily untidy, and she enjoyed a few days on her own getting the flat straight, for she had an innate love of order that made its production from chaos one of the chief joys of her existence. The fact that everything would become immediately disordered again upon his return did not worry her. She took things as they came and knew that everything must be paid for. Her father's presence by cigarette ash on the carpet, and order by possessing nothing of him but his old coat hanging behind the door. She would miss him today, but she would be gloriously tidy. And she liked being alone sometimes. One discovered things. And of course she wasn't really alone, for Mrs. Rutherford in the flat above kept an eye on her, as she was reminded by a faint remonstrance of tapping on the floor overhead. She remembered suddenly that Mrs. Rutherford's bedroom was just above, and that she made a good deal of noise when she let herself go in the early mornings. She switched her glorious contralto from Gloria in Excelsis Deo to a crooning song, and turned off the shower. Back in her bedroom, she remembered that Mr. Rutherford this time was just above and suffered from headaches, and she tried to shut her drawers very quietly and not to fall over anything. For though she was orderly, she was also a bit clumsy. She was 21 years old, but she had not yet outgrown the colt-like stage. Like all only children, she was in some ways too old for her age, and in other ways too young. She still fell over material things as though she were 15, but immaterial things such as friendships, the griefs of little children, the desires of men, and the jealousies of women, she handled with the instinctive sensitiveness that a woman of 35 could not have bettered. There were those who thought Sally Adair beautiful, and those who thought her the reverse. She was tall and straight, big-boned and muscular, and perhaps when she was 40 she would have to take steps if she did not want to grow fat. But there was no danger of that yet. She played games hard whenever she got the chance, and was at her happiest on a horse or rowing a boat, and there was not a scrap of laziness in her. With her big bones and her tendency to fall over things, she could hardly be called graceful, but yet she had a sort of grace, born of her complete unself-consciousness and the perfect balance of her strong young body. She had a glorious mop of unruly red-brown curls, the white skin that goes with such hair, and golden eyes like a lion's, that looked you straight in the face with a lion's courage. Her voice was deep and beautiful, and the Scotch nanny who had looked after her through her childhood had imparted to it a Scotch lilt that increased its beauty. But she had no beauty of feature. Her face was too broad across the cheekbones, her mouth was too large, though mercifully the teeth within it were small and white and even. Her nose turned up and had freckles on it. Though her hands were big, they were beautifully shaped, with long fingers, but to her shame she took sevens in shoes. Those who did not think her beautiful had a clear case, but those who thought otherwise had not only the hair and the eyes to back their opinion, for there was in Sally an indefinable quality that affected them, as the hearing of a perfect piece of music affected them, or the sight of a perfect picture. It was not a quality that could be analysed, but her father came closest to it when he said that in Sally there was no distortion. Neither heredity, environment, accident, nor disease had played any tricks with her. She came nearer to being what she had been meant to be than anyone he had known. Sally's mother had died at her birth, but that had not been the tragedy it might have been, for the fatherhood of John Adair was the best thing in him, as fine a thing as the deep, innate maternity of Sally herself, and any tendency to indulge in him had been counteracted by the stern discipline of Janet Gillespie, the Scotch nanny who had stayed with Sally until she had been packed off to boarding school at the age of 14. At 18, Sally had left school, and turning her back upon all tempting offers of privileged war work, had unhesitatingly gone on the land, where she had worked cheerfully and uncomplainingly at all sorts of back-breaking tasks until her extraordinary gift for handling living creatures had been discovered, and she had become a shepherdess in the Cumberland Hills. Sally at the lambing season had been Sally in her element. Motherless lambs brought up on the bottle by her had not known that they were motherless. Sally demobbed had been offered by her father Somerville, the Slade, the Rada, anything she liked to mention, but insisting that she had no more intellect than one of her own sheep, she had installed herself in his flat as a companion housekeeper, to the infinite delight and contentment of the two of them. For Sally maligned herself when she said she had no intellect. It was true that at school she had never passed any examination by anything except the skin of her teeth, but when it came to the business of living, she was a clever woman. She liked everyone she met. She enjoyed everything she did, so intensely that her relationships and her activities were touched with that spark of light that men call genius. She was not an artist in the accepted sense of the word, but when she cooked a meal or tidied a room, she was yet unmistakably her father's daughter. A room arranged by Sally, a meal she had cooked, were as unforgettable as her father's pictures. Imaginative deft touches, here and there, were like the glimmer of light on water that without it would have been opaque and dull. An upbringing by a father who had been middle-aged when she was born, and by a stern Presbyterian Scotswoman, a sojourn at school for 4 years only, and then a complete concentration upon lambs, had made of Sally a curiously individual person, neither of her father's generation nor her own, and so in some ways a little lonely. She did not speak the idiom of her own contemporaries, or share their disillusionments. She had worked hard in the war, but she had not suffered other than vicariously. In the presence of young men who had faced death day after day, night after night, for years, and of girls who had worked in the war hospitals and known the meaning of human agony, she was ashamed. The men sensed her shame and loved her for it. And they loved, too, the ignorance of which she was ashamed. It rested them. But the girls misjudged her humility, her unself-consciousness, her rather devastating truthfulness. It was a pose, they thought. And so her closest friends in her own generation were men rather than girls. And for this, again, the girls disliked her. But none of the men were very close friends, for her shame made her inwardly withdraw herself a little. In appearance as well as in speech and manner, Sally was individual, A dusting of powder over her distressing freckles was her only concession to make-up, her father having impressed upon her very forcibly that a mouth the size of hers did not require the emphasis of lipstick. She gave her copper curls a hard brushing every day and washed them every week, but that was all she did about them. Most of her clothes she made herself, and though she was enough her father's daughter to make her sense of colour and line unerring, their simplicity was childlike. She seldom wore jewels, and when she did they were her mother's old-fashioned ones, that lived in the old cedarwood box in her bottom drawer. Her fastidiousness was such that it had in itself almost the quality of a jewel garment. Body and spirit she clothed herself in it. Yet there was nothing aloof about it. She did not mind what dirty work she did, if the result was likely to be a patch of cleanliness.